Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today comes from the most recent Metis Strategy Digital Symposium, and the topic was driving practical progress on your artificial intelligence journey. The panelists who spoke about the topic were Ramesh Babu, Chief Information Officer of Digi-Key Electronics, and Alan Smith, the Chief Information Officer of Baker Tilly. The gentleman who led the conversation was Metis Strategy Partner and Central Office Lead Mike Bertha. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
And I'm going to start by welcoming Ramesh Babu and Alan Smith to the virtual stage. Ramesh is the CIO at Digi-Key Electronics, the fourth largest electronic components distributor in North America with revenue in the billions. And prior to Digi-Key, Ramesh held roles at Target, Lexmark International, and also as a consultant at Oracle. Alan Smith is the CIO at Baker Tilly, the global professional services firm providing advisory, tax, and assurance services to enterprises across the globe. Prior to joining Baker Tilly, Alan held various IT leadership roles, and he's also a resident expert on everything related to Wisconsin. So we put together this panel as these companies' products and services collectively are pretty much integral to every other sector in the economy in one way or another. And I don't have to say much based on the previous panels to make it clear that we're in the middle of an AI craze, and we can't go a day, an hour, or a minute in some cases, depending on how often you log into social media, without learning about a new AI use case, a new AI startup, or a cautionary tale of a situation where AI went wrong. Yet we're still really in the early innings. I read a couple days ago that more than 2/3 of generative AI startups are yet to even raise their Series A. So still very early in the game. But whether you are being asked to lead, take a major role, or figure out what this AI craze means for your company, you're maybe scratching your head and thinking, how do I cut through all of this noise and drive some practical progress towards business outcomes and make sure this isn't just another shiny object? Ramesh, I'm going to start with you and maybe just start with a simple question. How important is education on the topic of AI to driving practical progress?
You say simple. We all know this is the hardest question, right? And you use the word practical. I'm going to try avoid the buzzwords and truly try to be practical with how we are approaching that. You are right. The hype is intolerable for sitting in a company, inside of a company, then going out and talking to the friends or the outside circle. It's really constraining in a way, the hype that is created. It's almost like you have to have all the answers ready to go today, right? So that is a pressure we seem to be all living in the recent days. So it takes courage to take a step back and look at, maybe let's not fall into the hype. Let's go about this in a methodical way. That's how we are approaching it, right? I mean, again, there is no magic bullet. Maybe this is how everybody says that. But we have created a community of practice within the company, a formal structure and also a lot of informal structure within the company. We have created a list of key terms and consistent definition of those key terms. And we have been using many channels to spread those key terms, right? If you say generative AI, what does it really mean? One or two words of the definition that sticks rather than writing a page about that, right? And we also are creating what we call influencer network within the company, try to make them be the ambassador for that education piece. In many formal and informal forum, they are the people we tap into to go, hey, go listen into this meeting. AI will come at the right chance, do pitch in and correct or explain the definition of some of these terms that are freely floating around. Nothing magical about this, but really taking a practical approach of using the internal people And of course, we have the typical lunch and learn and blasted on your internal website about term of the day around AI. And we are also doing it in a balanced way, Mike, right? When you talk about education, the team that reads about them are all about the good and the hype side of the education, right? So you talk about risk, almost every one of my peer group, they talk about the risk side of the education as well, right? So we are taking a conscious effort to kind of balance both, even using examples of this is a case, this is a goodness of the case, this is a opportunity about the case or the risk for a company. So we are doing that in a balanced way. So does it make sense?
That's interesting, Ramesh. A lot of good tactical and practical things that other digital leaders can think about applying in their own companies. And I love the fact that you mentioned that our friends are asking about it now, and all of us have become the de facto AI experts. Did you see the segment on AI in 60 Minutes? So it's interesting. And Alan, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Another consequence of the craze is you're getting bombarded from people in your own company, from the different business units and functions. You're probably getting sent a lot of links. Hey, I read this on LinkedIn. Should we do this? And so if you're one of those folks that Ramesh has been dubbed as the AI community as practice, I'll ask you, do you get a lot of those emails, Alan? And do you get a lot of ideas sent your way?
Sure, and I respond the same way that The Simpsons did, which is I, for one, welcome our new computer overlords. All kidding aside, and really to double down on what Ramesh said, the hype is crazy, right? It's crazy, and part of the reason is that you're seeing the technology. We all knew this was coming, right? This isn't a surprise to anybody on this call, but what people didn't quite realize is that creepy factor. Right? How good is the technology? And it gives the semblance of having an intelligent answer. It's cogent, right? It reads well. It makes sense. It has context, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's intelligent.
Right.
So yeah, we get a lot of ideas. And the reality is you need to treat it just like you treat anything else. Okay. Yeah. There's a difference between home runs and singles. And singles in this case are your friend, right? Go do something, show it, have it be a tangible example. Now it can be used to fuel the really good ideas rather than the silly ideas. So yeah. We get a lot of these.
That's well said. One question that I'd have, and maybe many have in their day-to-day, is how do you pick which ones to work on first with all of these ideas coming your way? How do you hit those singles or pick which ones are going to be the singles? Because you got to get runs on the board, because people can get tired of multi-year AI journeys and multi-year budgets. So how do you pick which ones to hit the singles?
Well, if you're having a multi-year AI journey, and forgive me if I offend anyone, I think you're doing it wrong. The fact of the matter is, let's remember, this is all coming up because of ChatGPT, which is sitting on top of OpenAI, right? ChatGPT became available to the public in November of last year. Last time I checked, it's May. 6 months? Directionally accurate math? I cannot recall any hype that's been this much in 6 months since being commercially available. So number one is, talk about the hype. Hype is off the charts. Second thing is you have to be careful about the risks, because what does it mean to be on an AI journey? Let's pick on ChatGPT again. This is a publicly accessible ingestion mechanism where what you ask or what you want it to do, et cetera, goes right back into it. And there's huge concerns, especially from whether you be a manufacturer like Digi-Key or whether you be a professional services organization like Baker Tilly. We have data, we have client data, we have customer data. And the last thing in the world you want to be doing is putting that into the system. And so that's a bit of a difference than, oh, it's cloud and I want to go, on-prem to cloud and you have security risk. This is completely different. So you need to balance the ideas. What are they? How are you going to ingest data? How are you going to deliver something? What's the size, scale, and scope? What's the risk appetite? And finally, you can't avoid it. There's really two types of AI, right? And this is not a scientific answer. There's infused AI, right? You use Workday, Oracle, Salesforce, Microsoft, and you have Microsoft Insights. You're already consuming quote unquote AI, right? Machine learning, natural language processing, et cetera. Then you have AI as a solution. And I think that's where people start, oh my gosh, we could use AI for this thing. Or, oh my gosh, we don't ever want to use AI. With the infused, you're not going to have a choice.
I want to pitch in on the how do we pick the use case, right? Again, talk about values, right? How do you kind of measure value and go into a project, right? So it's the same conversation, but as I said, because of the hype, because of the pressure, it's a little bit of a different in the last 6 months, right? In my mind, you can take a defensive approach or an offensive approach, right? And in my mind, the way I think about those two when it comes to AI topic, this is the mantra we have been promoting inside. I still think, how do we address some of the existing vulnerability in our current business model, right? That's the defensive approach versus using AI to go to offense, right? So even this kind of terminology, when people come up with this crazy idea, let's go do this today, we ask them this question, what do you think it will get us? Whether it is fixing a gap you have, or do you think, can you commit to grow your business by $1 billion in the next 2 months? So suddenly you see them take a back seat about, oh, okay, I have to have that answer before I go ask for this AI use case to be deployed, right? So we have been trying to practice these kind of techniques. And again, nothing new here, right? It's like any other project, to kind of calm people down and go about it in a structured way to assess value before jumping in.
100%, right? There's a difference, as I say internally, there's a difference between doing anything, something, or the right thing. And the fact that it's AI does not matter. You still need to go through those processes. It is no different than trying to deal with innovation, trying to come up with ideas there, trying to come up with ideas, iteration, right? Sometimes we forget about that. It's no different. It just happens to have more glory right now because of mainstream, because of the media, what's being projected.
Well said. Alan, automation is in the orbit of AI, whether it's separate or a complementer. I mean, I think that depends on who you're talking to in these circles of your friends outside of work. But either applying automation and AI together to replace humans and processes, or playing on the human plus machine equation where the machine or the AI can help recommend actions to humans during their processes. And in both of these cases, especially in non-management level, this can create fear in organizations that their job is going to be replaced. And Alan, I think coming in the professional services environment where, and a lot of times your product is people, I wondered if you could start on how you think about that within your company.
Right. This is usually when I say I, for one, welcome our computer overlords. The reality for us in our industry within professional services, CPA, right? Our industry might be a bit unique. I think that there are others that are in the same camp, though, which is there are more jobs open today than there are college graduates with accounting degrees. So this is not about replacing labor. This is not about the traditional, oh, we can go offshore with labor or find lower labor rates. That is not the issue. The issue is we can't find enough. And so we have the luxury of not really having to deal with the fear factor. Because right now, I don't want to work 60 hours a week or more. I'd be happy working 40 hours a week. And if I can gain that advantage by utilizing technology, mention AI and automation in combination, great. So the human plus factor is where we go. And we think of AI as providing advice to the advisor. So However you do search, if you're in legal community and you would research case law, if you're in other professional services and you're providing research, et cetera, this would be true in other industries, I'm sure. Those are tools. And AI is going to be, at least for us for now, another tool. For the now and the foreseeable future, it's about how can we leverage the technology in conjunction in order to get over this, desert landscape of talent, because it is not coming out of the colleges.
Very interesting. Ramesh, coming back to you, there's a lot of plug and play applications out there. I mentioned all the startups, and again, an extension of the use case bombarding that's happening. Sometimes you'll come to find that an application of AI has been installed and it's in a function or a business unit. And for many reasons that have been mentioned, that's also concerning for you because it could be redundant, it could not be secure, it may not fit into the overall vision of AI. But how do you think about harnessing and reining in those different activities in the business units and functions to make sure that the AI vision, strategy, and investments all live in harmony?
This is also an age-old challenge for technology versus business, right? So as long as I remember, whether AI or not, some of the business, many times in a right way, want to go fast, right? So they don't have the patience to wait forever to get their project prioritized by IT. So in my mind, AI is also in the same realm, right? So we have to really be careful not to come across as putting roadblock for some of our business partners, right? So it's again comes back to culture in your company about how you handle technology, right? There will always be ideas that IT may not have capacity or willingness to go after. Fighting that will never work right? Because you are creating more animosity. So our approach was from a culture, I took AI out of the IT, and we formed that. I talked about the community of practice. We have a steering committee. We made the business leaders part of that steering committee. In fact, they are the leader of that steering committee, not IT. We took IT out of the AI equation in terms of looking at what is happening across the company, helping to prioritize. That suddenly changed the game for us. Instead of IT saying no and business going and doing something secretively or openly with an offensive attitude, they have become part of the solution as well in terms of controlling this proliferation of application. We are still seeing some of those happen. Individuals within a functions are doing it, but the approach had never been go punish them for doing that. Go again, use the community of practice, send the influencers to them to look at what they have done. How do we help them scale it? How do we help them understand the risk side of it? So it's happening every day, Mike, that across the company, business users, either wanting an idea to go fast or implementing it themselves. How we handle is the cultural portion of the problem for any project, any technology project. So we are going back to the basics and reminding them, hey, today you may find benefits, but when you want to scale, when you hit a roadblock with a risk, that's when you will come crying to the bigger organization. So how do we help you avoid it? Don't shut them down right away. It's one of the things that is working for us so far.
Right. Well said, Ramesh. And I think the combination of that response and some of the other topics we've hit on so far, while AI will be possibly exponentially more impactful and more of a revolution than some of the other disruptive technologies, what we're hearing here is many of the same principles of any project or any technology still apply. There has to be a business reason. There has to be a business owner. There has to be a partnership. There has to be security. And so I hope this foundation or conversation is grounding everyone in some of the other things that we can't forget as we move forward on this. And on that front, maybe going over to you, Alan, AI is not the exception that while the use cases and the business value could be really clear, there's still foundational technology components that need to be in place in the organization. So as you think about going after some of these use cases that are very compelling, what are the technology fundamentals or foundational things that we need not forget in order to not slow down our progress?
Well, one of the bane of every technology project's existence is data. And, having good data, clean data, et cetera. And I think in this case, it's not just data, but it's what are you having the system ingest? What are you having the system take in order to then render an opinion? All right. So for example, let's say you're providing advice to somebody. Am I having this thing consume Facebook feeds or Twitter feeds? I don't think so. Right. So you need to know what's going in to come up with what that recommendation or that answer or that advice is. So it's not just clean data, it's clean data, but what's being ingested or what you're curating prior to going in. The second is a large category of risk. And in this case, you need to identify and be very aware of data privacy, what you're putting in, are you containing it, et cetera. But there's a second part to it. And it's about bias. And it has to do with, again, knowing what you're having the system ingest, and then is it propagating an inherent bias, whatever that may be, that's included in that data set that you're putting into the system. I don't pretend or portend to have the answer, but this is really one of the first times that we've engaged in the conversation in this way about a technology. Whereas in the past, it's been about true business outcomes and results. Now there's more of that ESG function or DEI function coming in, which is real. If you ignore it, you do it at your own peril.
Interesting. Yeah. So confirming accuracy and unbiased data sources being key here, and maybe a slightly different consideration than other projects that we've come across so far. Ramesh, thinking about the electronic components distribution business, what are you seeing as some of the most compelling opportunities out there on the horizon for AI within your organization or the greater economy at large?
Our product portfolio is huge. So we sell about 20 million unique part numbers. We sell electronics, semiconductor, capacitor. As you know, lately it's been on the news all over about semiconductor. Like I know a lot of reference to the conflict with China. So the regulation around these electronic parts is unbelievable in terms of tariffs, in terms of import, export, the restrictions on where to send. We kind of ship to 180 countries around the world from one place in Minnesota. So we have to go through a lot of hoops to make sure we are not shipping parts to North Korea or places like that, right? So the biggest opportunity for us is the volume of product portfolio we have. How do we organize them? Like, for example, every SKU, I'm talking about 20 million of them, needs to have that HTS code, as they call it, right? This is the government has bounded books full of rooms that helps you define this so-called HTS code, harmonized tariff structure code, or something like that. And these AIs have been godsend for us because we have a huge team, like 20-member team, as we add products who have to read these books. And of course, experience helps to identify the right code. And we get huge penalty if we don't classify them right, because that's how government collects tariff from us, right? So the volume of product data or volume of any data, transactional data, is what is where we see the trend in AIs being used. In fact, we have a Gen AI, and I always have this rule inside the company. If you bring a fancy use case, that is very likely it's not going to work, right? I want a boring Gen AI use case is the way I think about it. And then the first one that got submitted is this exactly one. Hey, can we use Gen AI to classify product HTS code? And it kind of eliminated 5 headcount for us. It was 2 to 3 weeks effort internally. And we, again, talk about the risk. What we did is we kind of had a Azure copy of the model so that our data, the product data we are feeding into the model doesn't go out to the cloud, right? So we had to create our own instance of it. So we are managing risk that way to build a wall around these models when I feed these product data to them and come out with the results. So I see huge opportunity. Like, I know I tend to beat up more on AI than celebrate, but there are real use cases, something quick, something tangible, rather than if anybody promises me, you will save $20 million. I don't even wait to hear the next word. I walk out of the room because that is not real for us today, at least, right? So we want to keep it simple, not fancy, volume, the creative aspect of it. Our marketing team is also playing with some use cases around how do I quickly generate a 30 seconds video content based on our vast amount of data. And I want to go back to Alan's point. Lovely that Alan called data as the foundation. I think we keep forgetting that, right? The AI is not going to do magic on that, right? So we do need a lot of foundational work done on data before any AI can do any magic for you as well.
No, it's interesting. So fear the fancy. That's going to be our takeaway here. And we are at time. So I'm going to thank Ramesh and Alan for a great conversation.